Okay, the new pedals have arrived, along with a new shaft and new bearings. What I quite like about this thing is... Yeah, let's go ahead and drop this. My favorite part about this is that the way of mounting is different. You can see on this shaft, we've got like a square which is tapered, and that's where the pedal sits on. And it's basically a press fit holding this together. So after a couple of years this will just shrink together and become more or less one piece, and you will just have to smash it with a hammer like crazy to get it apart. This one is different. As you can see here, the shaft goes on with a slide fit, and what holds its position are these dowel pins here. So they're inserted in here like such, and I've got a flat ground or milled or filed or whatever to one side, and that flat will sit against the milled slot in the shaft, and that will hold the position tightly, which is a much easier way to put it together and take it apart. And it's also more secure, because all that keeps this one from falling apart is the press fit on here, which can eventually diminish after like pedaling on here for 60 years. And this funny little nut here, which just has a slit to exert force on it, you know, which is not what I would consider secure. So I'm quite happy with this here actually. So let's go ahead and grease this and install it and see how it works. And by the way, the nuts that came with this thing to fit on these dowel pins are rubbish. They are pretty sluggish fit. As you can see, they're not even in the center. The bore is not in the center of the hex. And the last thing you want with these is a sluggish fit on the threads, because this is quite a soft material. And you know, if you put too much force on it with a sluggish fit, that's just an invitation to strip the threads. So I took some new nuts here, and we're going to use these. So it's another day. My camera died in between, and that's why we have a different format today, because it's a different camera. I hope you can live with that. Back that day, what I did off camera, I drilled a hole here, I cut out a piece here and drilled 2 holes, and I fitted a wire underneath to give it stabilization. So I'm going to give you some close-up shots to see what I did, and then we're going to bother with the brakes. Okay, going from left to right, this is the rear suspension. Just a screw through here, and from the back it's secured with a nut. Then here you can see that I cut out a piece in between here, and drilled 2 holes on the top to stop it from tearing up more. Then I drilled 2 holes and fitted 2 bolts with it, and for extra stabilization I hammered down the edges around the surface of the holder here. And then from the other side, because while riding it was really quite you know, chattering along quite a bit. I fitted a piece of wire with the ends bent around 2 screws here, and it's holding down here and then bent up and just securing this against clattering against the chain. Looks pretty good, doesn't it? Okay, so we got that taken care of. Now let's face the brakes. The old ones, you know, the front brake doesn't do anything in respect of slowing the vehicle down. So we're going to switch to these U-type brakes. Now there's a little problem in converting these. The problem is not mounting this thing, because the measurements are basically like it's made for this, even the hole is drilled to mount such a brake. The problem is that you need, for these brakes, you need a pulling action, I'm sorry, and the old type of mechanics do a pushing action. Here, let me show you. I'm pulling the lever, and there is here an axis, which then converts this into a pushing motion, which is going down the rod, and then pushing the brake pad onto the tire. So that is where this handlebar comes into place. This handlebar looks very similar, only that when I now pull on this brake lever, it also pulls the rod, you see, near the handlebar. It pulls it up. So that's exactly what we need. The problem with this thing was it was made for 2 brakes. So you had a left lever and the right lever. You can see here I machined a joint, which basically this screws into and this screws into, converts this to one single piece. So let's flip the bike around, take the front wheel out, and remove the brake pad and the additional assembly. Okay, here we are upside down now. You can see how the braking pad is moving up and down. Now to get the handlebar out, we need to remove the brake pad first. So we're going to loosen up this screw down here. Okay, now you can better see what I'm doing. And out comes the brake pad. I'll show you here. So next thing we'll be removing that screw and removing the handlebar and figure out how we're going to mount this entire deal. Using the opportunity of the rim out of the fork, I'm now polishing it, getting all the old smudge of it, using a mixture of 50-50 elbow grease and patience, and it's paying off really well. Okay, so next step will be removing the stud here and placing the new caliper brakes in. Okay, here's what it will look like when it's finished. I would say that doesn't even make that big a notice, you know. Seems like it was meant to be there. So let's get the handlebar out and also figure out how we're going to mount the brake cables and stuff like that. Okay, temporarily attached is the handlebar, which will need to come out right again, because we need this part, we need to modify this, because let's take this as an example. Here we have the same thickness wire that we have on the brake, And before it enters into the pulling mechanism, it's going through this piece of tubing here. And we have the same thing here. To guide this to the straight upright piece, it will need to undergo a slight curve here. Now, if we didn't have the spacer tubing inside, that would just go straight up here, rub against here, and straight up here. Shortest way. So we want this to have a nice curve, so we need tubing from here to here, I would guess. And then we will pull the wire straight up into the linkage here and use the same mounting system as down here. It's just a bolt with a hole in it, you can see that there. So we will need to put something into here to permit the black tubing from sliding up into this part here. So I found a piece of metal which would almost fit in here, and so we're now going to make this fit basically. So we're going to saw off like that much here and then file the rest down so that it's a nice fit in here. Drill a hole, and then we're going to solder it into this piece here. Okay, here's the part. You can see that the solder also penetrated through. I added a little bit of solder on this side because it hadn't quite come through, but here it's all the way. And to save your time, I freed this all of the remaining flux, and I also drilled 2 holes into this, or 1 hole, which is the diameter 1 millimeter over the wire diameter at the one side, and at the other side is like a receptacle for the brass bushing, which sits at the end of the black rubber tube. Well, here is the length of tubing that we need for the brakes. Now, at the end of these cables there's usually this type of end cap. I was not able to get these off, they're pinched quite strongly on here, so we're going to make a new one, or 2 new ones for that matter. And so let's do that. Okay, I saved myself making the second one by just using the end piece where this one is already on. Here's the second one I made. It's from stainless steel, so I guess it shouldn't rust. Now I guess just put it in the vise and press it onto here. Okay, that's going to stay on there. Okay, the cable is installed. I know it looks a little bit much, but you have to imagine that the caliper is closer to the wheel, like that. And then it's alright. So next thing will be attaching the cable to the upper linkage here. You can see I've already, for test, installed a bolt here. And we're going to saw it off just like that length here, and then we're going to drill a hole across the threads to thread the wire through, and it's going to get secured by this nut. Well, that went better than I thought. Didn't even break the drill here. So we're now going to thread the wire through here. Being careful not to spread the leads out. And I tinned the other end, just some soft solder on here, to keep it from spreading out and also to keep it from falling through. Now we have to install the cable, and this is where you would normally need like 3 hands. So you want to get this up like this. See what I mean? Like this. And now we need to adjust the brake so that these pads are both equidistant from the rim. So we're going to do that off camera. It's just way too difficult to film it and get it adjusted. So see you then. The torch was a little bit weak to me considering the flame. So I took the wire I had, pulled one strand of it and tried to clean out the nozzle. Jesus Christ. It's not making frightening much for flame. Okay, so the calipers are closing up and down now. They're moving the wheel a little bit to the right, but I couldn't get that any better. Seems like this caliper on this side likes to stay stationary, and it's going to pull itself over as soon as this one touches the rim. So I just adjusted it so that neither of these sides would touch while this not being activated. And yeah, a huge advantage is you now have 2 brake levers, and I did a test on these 5 meters and it was significant difference over the push brake that it had before. And you know what? If I didn't know, I wouldn't be able to tell that someone did something here. So last thing we're going to do is mount the bell. Then we should be ready to hit the road again. You know, I'm pretty happy that I was able to do this conversion without changing anything on the original handlebar. So this guy will still keep as it is, just in case I need to change it back for some reason. You know, I might want to sell it in 30 years. Who knows?